History textbooks are filled with pages describing various revolutions, organized groups of people who fought with their lives to replace the existing ruling system with another. Many turned out to be failures, but occasionally one would result in a triumphant success. These uprisings tended to shape not only one country, but several, their influence sometimes crossing continents. The following 5 revolutions are particularly noteworthy for their long-lasting impact on the world. Through bloodshed came change, and whether it was for better or worse, there is no denying the importance of such pivotal moments in our history. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we will share with you some of the forgotten revolutions in history that you should know about. But first, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more similar content. Let's dive in. Number 5. The American Revolution, 1765 to 1783. Tensions between the British and their 13 American colonies began to mount in 1765 with the introduction of the Stamp Act, a decree imposing unpopular taxes on the colonies as a means to pay off the expenses from the 7 Years' War with France. Pockets of violence broke out as protesters, resenting the new taxes, voiced their unhappiness. A notable act of rebellion happened in 1773 when a group of protesters known as the Sons of Liberty dumped 342 chests of tea into Boston Harbor to protest taxation on tea, an event that became known as the Boston Tea Party. In 1774, 12 delegates from the 13 colonies came together to discuss the situation, forming the Continental Congress, which served as the governing body of the colonies in the transition to independence. At first, they did not openly demand independence, but they denounced taxation without representation within the British Parliament. War broke out in 1775 with the battles of Lexington and Concord, when the King's forces were sent to confiscate American military weapons and supplies. On July 4th of the following year, the Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence, an official proclamation rejecting the British monarchy, ultimately laying the groundwork for the formation of the United States of America. The violence continued for several years until George Washington's troops, alongside the French army, won a decisive victory over the British at the Battle of Yorktown in 1781. The conflict officially concluded 2 years later with the 1783 Treaty of Paris, in which the British abandoned all claims in the U.S. Number 4. The French Revolution, 1789 to 1799. In the late 18th century, the people of France were living mostly in squalor, all except the nobility, who lived lavish and expensive lifestyles. Frustrated with the monarchy, they collected heavy taxes but offered nothing in return. The citizenry turned their widespread discontent on King Louis XVI. Historians mark July 14, 1789 as the start of the conflict, when revolutionaries stormed Bastille, a medieval armory and prison, to arm themselves while simultaneously attacking a symbol of the monarchy's absolute power. The following 2 months were known as the Great Fear, as riots and mass hysteria consumed the country, while the National Constituent Assembly, a group of representatives from the Estates General who were pushing for change, continued to debate France's political future. Influential figures like Maximilien de Robespierre were championing total governmental reform. In the summer of 1792, a club of extremists known as the Jacobins arrested the king, who was attempting to flee. This led to the establishment of the National Convention, the first French Republic. In January 1793, King Louis XVI was executed by guillotine, sparking 10 months of unnecessary bloodshed as the Jacobins' reign of terror swept through France. In the end, between over 17,000 so-called enemies of the revolution were executed, and at least another 10,000 died in prison, awaiting their trial. The death of Robespierre marked a new period in which the French revolted against the excess use of violence. By August 1795, executive power lay with the Directory, a 5-member collective appointed by Parliament. But the state of the country did not improve. After 4 more years of hardships, corruption, and discontent, the conflict came to an end in 1799 when Napoleon Bonaparte seized power through the coup d'etat. The French Revolution is notable for the abolishment of the French monarchy that had ruled for centuries. It demonstrated the power of the people and their ability to make a difference. Number 3. The Haitian Revolution, 1791 to 1804. Saint Domingue, modern-day Haiti, was a French colony on the Caribbean island of Hispaniola since 1659. Inspired by the French Revolution, groups of slaves rose up to fight their oppressors on August 22, 1791. Over 100,000 former slaves joined the cause, killing plantation owners and destroying their property. The French colonizers had been prepared for fear of an uprising, but this did not matter much. Led by former slave Toussaint Louverture, the revolutionaries had taken control of a third of the island by 1792. To stop the bloodshed, the National Assembly back in France granted rights to the men of color in Saint-Domingue. In 1793, the white population made a pact with Britain. Britain, concerned about revolts in their own Caribbean territories, notably Jamaica, agreed to conquer the colony and restore slavery. Spain also entered the conflict as their colony, Saint Domingo, was also located on Hispaniola Island. After France officially abolished slavery in Saint Domingue in 1794, Louverture went from fighting against them to fighting for them. The British eventually gave up their conquest after a series of defeats. By 1801, Louverture had declared himself Governor-General for life over the island of Hispaniola. However, the revolutionary leader was eventually captured by Napoleon's troops, who were sent to reclaim Saint-Domingue. Louverture died in a French prison, but one of his generals, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, led the man's forces to victory at the Battle of Vertières in 1803. On New Year's Day, 1804, Haiti became the first black republic when Dessalines renamed the colony and declared its independence. Historians consider the Haitian Revolution to be the most successful slave rebellion in the Western world. Its impact felt across the Americas. Number 2. The Chinese Revolution of 1911. Because of a series of failed wars, the Qing dynasty was quickly losing prominence in China. Nationwide frustration soon sparked rebellious thoughts among the common citizens. As a result, in the earliest years of the 20th century, the Revolutionary Alliance was formed in an attempt to abolish the imperial system. Dubbed the father of the nation, politician and physician Sun Yat-sen played an instrumental role in the movement. Several revolts were launched, all of which were quashed by the Qing army. But in the fall of 1911, an uprising in Wuchang turned the tide. In the interest of stopping the bloodshed, the Qing court began discussing the possibility of a constitutional monarchy, going so far as naming Yuan Shikai as the new premier. Even with the promise of reform, the various Chinese provinces declared their allegiance to the Revolutionary Alliance. Representatives of the provinces gathered for the First National Assembly, where they elected Sun Yat-sen as the provisional president of the new Republic of China. In 1912, the emperor abdicated the throne, bringing an end to the imperial system and the centuries-long rule of the Qing dynasty. After negotiating, Yuan Shikai agreed to the formation of the republic as long as he was named the first official president. The Revolution of 1911 was a critical moment in Chinese history because of how it paved the way for the Chinese Communist Revolution in 1949, an upbringing that established the People's Republic of China under the rule of Mao Zedong. Number 1. The Cuban Revolution, 1953 to 1959. In November 1956, 82 men representing the 26th of July movement sailed from Mexico aboard the Granma, a small yacht. Batista's forces learned of the attack ahead of time and ambushed the revolutionaries shortly after they landed in a remote area of eastern Cuba on December 2, 1956. Though most of the group was killed, around 20 of them escaped, including Fidel and Raul Castro, and one of Castro's foreign recruits, Argentine-born Dr. Ernesto Che Guevara. Reaching the Sierra Maestra Mountains, Castro's group attracted new members and began a guerrilla campaign against Batista's better armed and more numerous forces. Over the next 2 years, Cuba existed in a virtual state of civil war, with rebel forces carrying out attacks on government facilities, sugar plantations, and other sites as Batista's regime cracked down on anyone suspected of collaborating with Castro's revolution. In response to growing opposition, Batista suspended constitutional protections for Cubans, including freedom of speech and assembly. The following year, he called for the planned presidential election to be postponed, blaming the ongoing violence. Believing support for the revolution was waning, Batista called for a major military offense against the rebels in the Sierra Maestra Mountains in the summer of 1958. Instead, the rebels swiftly turned back the offensive, forcing the army to withdraw, with international media giving favorable press coverage to the revolutionaries. The United States began to withdraw support for Batista's government, which it had previously backed due to the dictator's anti-communist stance. In November 1958, the Cuban presidential elections went ahead amid widespread fraud, with Batista's chosen successor winning despite a more moderate candidate receiving more legitimate votes. As support for Batista continued to erode, the 26th of July revolutionaries struck the decisive blow in late December 1958, with Guevara's forces defeating a much larger army garrison in the Battle of Santa Clara and capturing a train loaded with vital arms and ammunition. On January 1, 1959, with rebel forces bearing down on Havana, Batista fled Cuba for the Dominican Republic. He later proceeded to Portugal, where he would remain in exile until his death in 1973. Fidel Castro arrived in Havana on January 9th to take charge of a new provisional government, quickly consolidating control and rounding up Batista's supporters, many of whom were tried and executed by revolutionary courts. Though Castro had called for elections during the revolution, he postponed them indefinitely once he came to power. That was all from us today for this video. For more similar content, make sure to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.